She threw the wine in his face, right there, in front of 40 millionaires. A $400 glass of Chateau Margaux dripping down the face of a black waiter who stood frozen, humiliated, silent. "This is what happens when you hire from the gutter," Victoria Harrington announced to the room. "No education, no future, just another welfare case pretending to belong." She had no idea he graduated top of his class at Harvard Law. She had no idea he was a former federal prosecutor. And she definitely had no idea that he personally handled the investigation that would destroy everything she built. What happened next shook Wall Street to its core. Comment your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. The wine hit Marcus Thompson's face at exactly 8:47 p.m. He didn't flinch. 14 months of practice had taught him that much. You could be drowning on the inside and still look like a statue on the outside. That was the trick. That was survival. The red liquid ran down his cheek, soaking into his white collar. It stained his bow tie. It dripped onto the marble floor of the Monarch, New York's most exclusive restaurant, where a single appetizer cost more than most people's weekly groceries. 40 pairs of eyes watched him. Nobody moved. Victoria Harrington stood over him, her hand still extended from the throw her $40,000 Chanel suit. Immaculate, her face twisted with disgust. "Well," she demanded, "aren't you going to apologize?" Marcus reached slowly for the towel on his arm. He dabbed his face. Once. Twice. His movements were deliberate, controlled. "I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am," he said. His voice was steady, flat, professional. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She'd wanted a reaction. She'd wanted him to crumble, to beg, to prove her point about people like him. Instead, she got nothing. That made her angrier. "The inconvenience." She laughed, turning to her guests at the table. "Did you hear that he thinks spilling wine on my scarf is an inconvenience? This scarf costs $15,000. That's probably more than he makes in a year." One of the men at her table, a gray-haired executive in a navy suit, shifted uncomfortably. "Victoria, maybe we should just..." "No." She held up her hand. "I want everyone to understand something. This is exactly what's wrong with America today. People like this." She gestured at Marcus like he was furniture, thinking they deserve to be in the same room as people like us. Marcus said nothing. He simply stood there, wine still dripping from his chin, waiting. Victoria stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, close enough that only he could hear her next words. "I know your type," she whispered. "No father, no education. Probably got some girl pregnant at 16, and now you're here carrying plates pretending you matter." She smiled. "You don't matter. You never will." Marcus's jaw tightened, just slightly, just enough that if you weren't looking you'd miss it. But Victoria was looking, and she saw. "Oh," she said, delighted. "Did I hit a nerve?" "What is it?" "The father thing. Let me guess. Never met him, or maybe he's in prison." "That's usually how it goes with..." "My father was a Marine," Marcus said quietly. "He served 3 tours in Vietnam. He died when I was 12. Lung cancer from Agent Orange." For a split second, something flickered across Victoria's face, but it vanished immediately. "How touching," she said. "And yet here you are, serving drinks. I'm sure he'd be so proud." She turned back to her table, dismissing him with a wave of her hand. "Someone get me another glass of wine, and get this one away from me. He's ruining my appetite." Marcus walked to the kitchen. His hands were steady. His breathing was even. 14 months of practice. The kitchen doors swung closed behind him, and only then, only when no one could see, did he lean against the wall and close his eyes. His father's face flashed in his mind. Those strong hands that used to throw a football with him in the backyard. That deep voice that read him stories at night. That smile that could light up a room. "Son, there's gonna be people in this world who look at your skin and think they know everything about you. Don't you ever let them define you. You hear me? Never." "I hear you, Dad," Marcus whispered to the empty air. He opened his eyes, took a breath, straightened his bow tie. Then he went back to work. 3 hours earlier, Marcus's day had started like every other. 5:30 a.m. Alarm. He rolled out of bed quietly, careful not to wake the small figure sleeping in the room next door. His apartment wasn't much, 2 bedrooms in a building that had seen better decades, but it was theirs, his and Amelia's. The coffee maker gurgled to life. Marcus stared out the window at the gray Brooklyn morning while it brewed. His reflection stared back at him. 34 years old. A face that used to appear on legal news networks. Hands that used to hold documents that could send people to prison. A mind that used to untangle the most complex financial crimes in the country. Now he was a waiter. Life has a way of humbling you, he thought. Sometimes it brings you to your knees. And sometimes you choose to kneel because standing up costs more than you can afford to pay. Daddy. He turned. Amelia stood in the doorway. Her pink pajamas wrinkled, her braids messy from sleep, clutching the stuffed elephant that had once belonged to her mother. Hey, baby girl. Marcus smiled and crouched down. Why are you up so early? I heard you. She rubbed her eyes. You were talking to yourself again. Was I? Uh-huh. She patted over and wrapped her small arms around his neck. Were you talking to Mommy? Marcus felt his throat tighten. 3 years. 3 years since cancer had taken Lisa. 3 years of doing this alone. 3 years of trying to be both father and mother to a little girl who still asked when Mommy was coming back. I was talking to Grandpa James, he said. You know your grandpa who was a hero? Amelia nodded seriously. The one who fought in the war. That's right. Why do you talk to him? Marcus kissed her forehead. Because sometimes, baby girl, when the world gets heavy, we need to remember the people who loved us. They give us strength. Amelia considered this with the gravity only a 7-year-old could muster. I talk to Mommy sometimes, she admitted. At night, before I go to sleep. Yeah. What do you tell her? I tell her that Daddy makes really good pancakes now, and that I got an A on my spelling test, and that I miss her. She paused. And that I'm taking care of you, like she asked me to. Marcus pulled her close, burying his face in her hair so she wouldn't see his eyes glistening. You're doing a great job, baby, he managed. Mommy would be so proud of you. By 7:30, Amelia was dressed and fed. Marcus walked her to the bus stop, holding her hand the whole way. Daddy, why do you have to work tonight? It's Friday. I know, sweetheart, but Friday nights are busy. That's when Daddy makes the most money. For the college fund? That's right, for your college fund. Amelia looked up at him with Lisa's eyes, those deep brown eyes that could see right through any pretense. You went to college, right, Daddy? I did. A really good one. One of the best. Then why do you carry plates? Marcus stopped walking. He knelt down right there on the Brooklyn sidewalk and looked his daughter in the eyes. You know what, Amelia? That's a really smart question. And the truth is, sometimes grown-ups have to make choices. Hard choices. When Mommy got sick, I needed to take care of her. And when Mommy went to heaven, I needed to take care of you. My old job. It kept me away too much. You needed me home. You needed me present. So I found a different job. One that lets me be here for you. But you're sad sometimes. I'm not sad, baby. Daddy. She gave him a look that was so much like Lisa it hurt. I'm 7, not stupid. Marcus laughed despite himself. You're definitely not stupid. You're the smartest kid I know. So why are you sad? He thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm not sad, he said finally. I'm just waiting. Sometimes you have to wait for the right moment. The moment when you're ready to be who you're supposed to be again. The school bus rounded the corner. Amelia hugged him tight. I think you're already who you're supposed to be, Daddy. You're my daddy, That's the best thing to be." She ran off toward the bus, waving over her shoulder. Marcus watched until the bus disappeared around the corner. Then he stood alone on the empty sidewalk, her words echoing in his mind. "You're my daddy. That's the best thing to be." Maybe she was right. Maybe that was enough. The Monarch wasn't just a restaurant. It was a temple to money, to power, to the strange religion of wealth that New York worshipped above all else. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than houses, marble floors imported from Italian quarries, a wine cellar that held bottles older than the Constitution, and the people. God, the people. Hedge fund managers who made more in a month than most families made in a lifetime. Tech billionaires who talked about disrupting things while they disrupted nothing but tax codes. Old money heiresses who had never worked a day in their lives but spoke with authority about the dignity of labor. Marcus had served them all. The good ones there were a few. The bad ones there were more. And the truly terrible ones, the ones who saw service workers as subhuman, as props in their performance of power. He'd learned to read a room in seconds. Who was nervous? Who was lying? Who was dangerous? 7 years as a prosecutor had trained him to see the truth behind every mask, and 14 months at the Monarch had taught him to pretend he didn't see anything at all. "Thompson, you're on tables 12 through 18 tonight." Raymond Chen, the floor manager, handed him a printout. Raymond was a compact man in his 50s, efficient and unflappable. He'd managed the Monarch for 15 years. Nothing surprised him anymore. "Any VIPs I should know about?" Marcus asked. Raymond hesitated. That was unusual. Raymond never hesitated. "Table 16, 8 p.m. reservation, Victoria Harrington." The name landed like a punch. Marcus kept his face neutral. The Victoria Harrington. The one and only. CEO of Harrington Capital. Forbes list. Time magazine cover. All of it. Raymond lowered his voice. "She's also one of the most demanding guests we've ever had. And I mean ever. Last time she was here, she made 3 servers cry. Literally cry." "What happened?" "One of them mispronounced Gewürztraminer. Victoria spent 10 minutes lecturing her about the decline of American education and the tragedy of hiring incompetence. The girl was 19. It was her second day." Marcus nodded slowly. "So stay away from her. If you can. She's meeting with potential investors tonight. Big deal in the works. She'll want everything perfect. And by perfect, I mean invisible. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. Don't exist unless she needs something." "I understand." Raymond studied him for a moment. There was something in his eyes, a question he wanted to ask but knew better than to voice. "Marcus, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've seen a lot of people come through here. You're different. I don't know your story, and I'm not asking. But whatever you're running from, don't let someone like Victoria Harrington make you forget who you are." He walked away before Marcus could respond. The evening unfolded like every other. Soft music, clinking glasses, the murmur of quiet conversations and barely contained egos. Marcus moved between tables like a ghost. Water refills, wine pours, appetizer placements. The choreography of servitude he'd perfected over 14 months. Table 12, a young couple clearly on a first date, both too nervous to eat. Marcus made sure to give them space. Table 14, 2 lawyers negotiating a merger speaking in code words and abbreviations. Marcus pretended not to understand. Table 15, an elderly woman dining alone. Her husband's picture displayed beside her bread plate. Marcus made sure her water glass was never empty. And then there was table 16. Victoria Harrington arrived at exactly 8 p.m. Not 7:59. Not 8:01. Exactly 8 Husurers. She walked in like she owned the building. And maybe she did. Marcus wouldn't have been surprised. Harrington Capital had investments in half of Manhattan's real estate. Two men followed her, both in expensive suits, both with the nervous energy of people who desperately wanted to impress someone who had all the power. And behind them, a young woman with a tablet, Victoria's assistant, scribbling notes on everything, seeing everything, saying nothing. Victoria was exactly what Marcus expected. Late 50s, blonde hair that probably cost a fortune to maintain. A face that might have been beautiful once, but had hardened into something cold and calculating. Eyes that swept the room and dismissed it in one glance. She sat without waiting to be seated. The center table. The throne of the monarch. The wine list, she said to no one in particular. And someone adjust that light. It's directly in my eyes. The evening manager rushed to comply. Marcus stayed on the periphery, serving his other tables, watching from a distance. Something about Victoria Harrington set off every alarm in his mind. Not just arrogance, he'd seen plenty of that. Something deeper. Something familiar. 5 years ago, he'd been an assistant U.S. attorney. 14 cases. 14 convictions. And several of those cases had involved companies connected to Harrington Capital. He'd never met Victoria personally, but he knew her type. The type who believed rules were for other people. The type who built empires on the broken backs of those they considered beneath them. The type who never ever faced consequences. Until they did. The incident happened at 8:47. Marcus had successfully avoided table 16 for almost an hour. Other servers handled the wine, the appetizers, the endless special requests. But then Jerome, the senior waiter assigned to Victoria's table, rushed up to Marcus near the kitchen. "I need help," Jerome whispered. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. "She's asking for more water and I can't go back there. She called me a pathetic excuse for human help. In front of everyone. I can't." Marcus looked at the trembling man. Jerome was 60 years old. He'd been at the Monarch for 2 decades. A good man. A professional. And Victoria Harrington had broken him in under an hour. "I'll handle it," Marcus said. "Are you sure she's—" "I know what she is." Marcus picked up the crystal water pitcher. He checked his uniform, straightened his bow tie, and he walked toward table 16. Every step felt heavy. He could hear Victoria's voice before he reached the table. Loud, commanding, demanding attention. "The Tokyo office alone generated $400 million last quarter," she was saying to her investors. "We're positioned to dominate the Asian market within 18 months. Anyone who's not on board is going to be left behind." The investors nodded eagerly. Too eagerly, too. Marcus approached from the side the way he'd been trained, invisible, silent. He reached for the first glass, the woman's Victoria's assistant. Perfect pour, not a drop spilled. He moved to the second glass, then the third, and then he reached Victoria's glass. She shifted in her seat suddenly, her elbow shooting out to emphasize a point about destroying the competition. Her elbow hit his arm. The pitcher tilted. A splash of water, maybe 4 drops, landed on her scarf. Time stopped. Victoria looked down at her scarf, then up at Marcus, and her face transformed into something ugly. "You have got to be kidding me," she said, her voice cutting through the restaurant. "I apologize, ma'am. It was an accident. An accident." She stood up her chair, scraping against the marble. "An accident. Do you have any idea what you just ruined?" The entire restaurant was watching now. "This is a Hermes scarf. Limited edition. $15,000. And you just destroyed it because you can't even hold a pitcher steady. Ma'am, I deeply apologize. If you'll allow me to—" "Allow you to what? Fix it with what, your minimum wage paycheck?" She laughed cruelly. "You couldn't afford to dry clean this, let alone replace it." Marcus remained still. Professional. His training holding. But Victoria was just getting started. She looked him up and down slowly, deliberately, like she was examining something distasteful. "Look at you," she said. "You know what I see. I see exactly what's wrong with this country. People like you thinking you can stand in the same room as people like me." The investors at the table exchanged uncomfortable glances, but none of them spoke. "Let me guess your story." Victoria continued, circling him like a predator. "Born poor, probably in some housing project. Never knew your father, dropped out of school, got a girl pregnant too young, and now you're here carrying plates because that's all you're qualified to do." Marcus said nothing. His face was stone. "Am I right?" Victoria demanded. "Of course I'm right. It's always the same story with people like you. No ambition, no education, no future. Just biological machinery designed to serve your betters." She grabbed the wine glass from the table, a $400 Chateau Margaux, and threw it in his face. The liquid splashed across his skin, red like blood, staining his shirt, his face, his dignity. The restaurant gasped. Victoria smiled. "This is what happens when you hire from the gutter," she announced to the room. "No education, no future, just another welfare case pretending to belong." Marcus stood there, wine dripping down his face, and everyone waited for him to break. He didn't break. He reached for his towel, dabbed his face. Once, twice. And then something shifted. It was subtle at first, a straightening of his spine, a squaring of his shoulders, the transformation of a man who had been pretending to be small, remembering that he was not small at all. Victoria noticed. Her smile faltered. "What?" she demanded. Nothing to say, no excuse, no apology. Marcus set down the towel. When he spoke, his voice was different. It wasn't the voice of a waiter. It wasn't the voice of a servant. It was the voice of a man who had stood in federal courtrooms and made billionaires tremble. "You asked about my education," he said. Victoria blinked. "Excuse me? You assumed I dropped out of school. You were wrong." He looked her directly in the eyes. "Harvard Law, class of 2015, top 3%. I passed the bar in 3 states, on my first attempt." The room went silent. Victoria's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Before that," Marcus continued, "Georgetown University, International Relations and Economics, summa cum laude." He turned to one of the investors, the German one based on his accent earlier, and then Marcus spoke in flawless German. "Sir, the Berlin project she pitched you earlier, the one with guaranteed approvals. It's stalled in committee. Zoning violations. She's known for 3 months. She was hoping to secure your funding before you found out." The investor's face went rigid. Marcus turned to the other investor, the one who had been discussing the Shanghai deal. He switched to perfect Mandarin. "The projected returns she showed you inflated by 40%. The actual numbers are buried in subsidiary reports she assumed you'd never read. You should read them." The second investor's eyes went wide. Victoria's face had gone white. "How dare you?" she breathed. "I'll have you arrested," Marcus interrupted calmly. "Sued, destroyed." He smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Ms. Harrington, I spent 7 years as an assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York. My specialty was financial crimes, fraud, money laundering, the kind of white-collar crimes that powerful people commit because they believe they're untouchable." He took a step closer to her. "I know exactly who you are. I know about Robert Chen, the investor you defrauded out of $12 million. I know about Patricia Mendez, the single mother who lost her home because of your Miami project. I know about the sealed settlements, the threatened families, the buried evidence." Victoria's hands were shaking now. "And I know," Marcus said, his voice dropping low, "that 3 months ago the SEC opened an active investigation into Harrington Capital. Subpoenas are being prepared. Your CFO has already been interviewed. And the whistleblower who started it all, she kept everything." The room was frozen. No one moved. No one breathed. Victoria Harrington, the Queen of Wall Street, looked like she was about to collapse. "You called me uneducated," Marcus said quietly. "You called me nothing. You looked at my skin, my uniform, and decided I didn't matter." He straightened his wine-stained tie. "But here's what you didn't understand, Ms. Harrington. The person you humiliate might just be the one who knows where all your bodies are buried. And when you throw wine in the face of a former federal prosecutor who specialized in putting people like you in prison," he smiled, "you don't get to walk away." The silence that followed Marcus's words was absolute. 40 people in that restaurant, and not one of them breathed. Forks suspended mid-air. Conversations frozen mid-sentence. Even the soft background music seemed to fade into nothing. Victoria Harrington stood perfectly still, her face a mask of controlled fury. But Marcus had spent 7 years reading people in courtrooms. He could see the fear beneath the surface, the slight tremor in her hands, the pulse jumping in her throat. She was terrified, and she should be. "You're insane," Victoria finally said. Her voice was steady, but it cost her something to keep it that way. "You're a waiter with delusions of grandeur. Everything you just said is a lie, and I will sue you into oblivion." "Go ahead," Marcus replied calmly. "Discovery would be fascinating. I'm sure your lawyers would love explaining those offshore accounts in Cyprus to a federal judge." The German investor stood up abruptly. His chair scraped against the marble floor, the sound cutting through the tension like a knife. "I want to leave," he said to no one in particular. His accent was thicker now, stress breaking through his careful English. "This meeting is over." "Hans, wait." Victoria reached for his arm. "You can't possibly believe this man. He's a waiter. He's nobody." Hans pulled his arm away, like her touch burned him. "Nobody." He looked at Marcus, then back at Victoria. "This nobody just told me things about the Berlin project that only someone with inside knowledge would know. Things you assured me were resolved months ago. He's lying. He's making it up. Is he—" Hans pulled out his phone. "Then you won't mind if I call my lawyers right now and have them verify everything." Victoria's face went pale. "That's not necessary. We can discuss this privately tomorrow after we've all had time to—" "After you've had time to create new documents to bury more evidence." Hans shook his head. "I've been in business for 40 years, Miss Harrington. I know what guilt looks like, and right now I'm looking at it." He walked toward the exit without another word. The second investor, a younger man, Chinese-American, who had been silent throughout the exchange, stood up slowly. He looked at Marcus with an expression that was difficult to read. "The Shanghai numbers," he said quietly. "You said they were inflated by 40%. Marcus nodded. "The real projections are in the subsidiary filings. Harrington Construction Limited, registered in Delaware. The quarterly reports are public record. She was counting on you not looking." The man's jaw tightened. "I invested $12 million based on her projections. $12 million. You should speak with an attorney," Marcus said, "before you sign anything else." The investor looked at Victoria. Whatever respect had been in his eyes was gone now, replaced by something cold. "My people will be in touch," he said, "and not for the reasons you hoped." He walked out. Victoria watched them go, her empire crumbling with each footstep. Then she turned to Marcus, and the mask finally dropped. "You have no idea what you've just done," she hissed. Her voice was low now, dangerous meant only for him. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do to you?" "I know exactly who you are," Marcus replied. "I've known since the moment you walked through those doors. 5 years ago, your company's name crossed my desk at the U.S. Attorney's Office, multiple times. We could never quite build a case because witnesses kept disappearing. Evidence kept getting lost. People kept getting paid off or scared off." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "If you knew so much, why didn't you do anything about it?" "Because I wasn't the lead prosecutor. Because the cases got reassigned. Because your lawyers were very, very good at making problems go away. Marcus paused. But problems don't actually go away, Ms. Harrington. They just wait, and eventually they come back. Is that what this is? Victoria stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. Revenge. Some pathetic grudge because you couldn't catch me when you had the chance. This isn't revenge. This is just the truth. You asked who I was. You made assumptions based on the color of my skin and the uniform I was wearing. You decided I was nothing. You were wrong. Victoria laughed. It was an ugly sound. The truth, she repeated mockingly. You want to talk about truth. Here's a truth for you. By tomorrow morning, I will know everything about you. Your address, your bank accounts, your family, everything. And I will use every resource at my disposal to destroy your life. Whatever pathetic existence you've built, I will burn it to the ground. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. His family. She had said family. Be very careful, he said quietly. What you're describing sounds a lot like witness intimidation, and threatening a former federal prosecutor. That's generally considered unwise. Former prosecutor, Victoria emphasized. Former. You're not anymore. You're a waiter. You're nothing. And no one is going to believe a word you say when I'm done with you. She grabbed her purse from the table. This isn't over, she said. You've made an enemy tonight. The kind of enemy that doesn't forgive and doesn't forget. Neither do I, Marcus replied. Victoria turned to leave, but Raymond Chen, the floor manager, was blocking her path. Ms. Harrington. Raymond said, his voice steady. I think it's best if you settle your bill and don't return. Victoria stared at him in disbelief. Excuse me. The monarch has a policy against guests who assault our staff. You threw wine in my employee's face. In front of witnesses. That's assault. Assault. Victoria laughed incredulously. It was wine. It was assault. And based on what I just heard, it seems you've done far worse things than throw wine. Raymond didn't flinch. Your account will be closed. You're no longer welcome here. For a moment, Marcus thought Victoria might actually strike Raymond. Her whole body tensed, her hands curling into fists. But then she seemed to remember where she was, who was watching. You're making a mistake, she said coldly. Both of you. Everyone in this room is making a mistake by not stopping this insanity. She looked around at the other guests, expecting support, expecting the solidarity of wealth. No one met her eyes. Victoria Harrington walked out of the Monarch alone. The door closed behind her, and the room exhaled. Marcus stood there, wine still staining his shirt, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his temples. What had he done? 14 months of careful anonymity destroyed in 10 minutes. 14 months of being invisible, of protecting himself and Amelia, of staying off everyone's radar. Gone. Raymond approached him slowly. My office, he said. Now. Marcus nodded and followed him through the kitchen, past the staring cooks and servers, into the small office at the back of the restaurant. Raymond closed the door. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Harvard Law, Raymond finally said. Top 3%. Yes. Former federal prosecutor. Yes. Speaks multiple languages. 4. Fluently. Raymond sat down heavily in his chair. He looked at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. 14 months, Raymond said. 14 months you've been working here and you never said a word. I knew you were different. I knew there was something about you. But this... I wasn't hiding, Marcus said. I was just... waiting. Waiting for what? Marcus thought about the question, really thought about it. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe for permission. Maybe for a sign that it was okay to be myself again. And tonight I stopped waiting. Raymond leaned back in his chair. You just destroyed one of the most powerful women in New York finance, in public, in front of witnesses. Do you understand what that means? I understand. She's going to come after you. Everything she threatened, she'll do it. People like her don't make empty threats. I know. Then why? Raymond asked. Why throw away everything you've built here? The anonymity, the safety. Why risk it all for what pride ego? Marcus shook his head slowly. She said something about my father, about him being in prison, about me being worthless because of where I came from. He paused. My father was James Thompson, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. 3 tours in Vietnam, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. He died when I was 12 years old from cancer caused by Agent Orange. The government denied his VA claims for years. My mother worked 3 jobs to pay for his medical care. And after he died, she worked 2 more jobs to make sure I could go to college. Marcus's voice was steady, but Raymond could see the emotion beneath the surface. Everything I am, everything I've accomplished is because of 2 people who sacrificed everything for me. And when Victoria Harrington stood there and told me I was nothing, told me my father was probably a criminal, told me people like me don't deserve to exist in the same room as people like her. He met Raymond's eyes. I couldn't stay silent. Not again. Not anymore. Raymond was quiet for a long moment. You have a daughter, he finally said. Amelia Wright, 7 years old. Marcus nodded, his chest tightening. How did you know her name? You mentioned her once, last Christmas when you asked for the morning shift so you could take her to see the Nutcracker. Raymond smiled slightly. I remembered because most of the staff fight for the evening shifts, more tips. But you wanted mornings, because she mattered more. She's everything, Marcus said simply. Then you need to protect her. Victoria Harrington has resources you can't imagine. If she decides to make your life difficult, she can do it. Legally, financially, personally. She can make you disappear. I know. Do you have a plan? Marcus thought about the cards in his hand, the knowledge he'd accumulated over years of prosecuting financial crimes, the contacts he still had in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the evidence that had never quite made it into official files, but that he had never forgotten. I have options, he said. Options aren't a plan. Then I'll make a plan. Marcus straightened. But first I need to get home to my daughter. I need to make sure she's safe. Raymond nodded and stood up. He walked to his desk drawer, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to Marcus. What's this? Your wages, through the end of the month, plus a bonus. Marcus looked at him. You're firing me. I'm freeing you, Raymond corrected. Whatever you were hiding from whatever sent you here 14 months ago, you're not running from it anymore. You stood up. You spoke. You can't go back to being invisible after that. He smiled. Besides, I have a feeling you're going to be very busy soon. And it won't be refilling water glasses. Marcus took the envelope. Thank you, he said, for everything. Thank me by taking her down, Raymond replied. People like Victoria Harrington have been getting away with things for too long. Someone needs to stop them. Maybe that someone is you. Marcus walked out of the office, through the kitchen, past the staff, who watched him with newfound respect. Jerome, the elderly waiter who had asked Marcus to cover Victoria's table, stopped him at the door. Is it true? Jerome asked. All those things you said about her, the fraud, the investigation. Every word. Jerome's eyes glistened. My wife lost her retirement in one of those collapsed funds 3 years ago. We never knew who was responsible. We just knew our savings were gone and nobody was held accountable. Marcus felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. What was the fund called? He asked. Greenfield Retirement Services. They promised guaranteed returns, safe investments. And then, one day, everything was gone. Marcus knew that name. Greenfield Retirement Services. It had been connected to Harrington Capital. Another case that never quite made it to prosecution. I remember that case, Marcus said quietly. 3,000 people lost their savings. The fund manager fled to Costa Rica. But he wasn't working alone. Victoria Harrington. Jerome's voice was barely a whisper. Her company provided the capital. Her lawyers provided the structure. When it collapsed, she walked away with her profits while everyone else lost everything. Marcus put his hand on Jerome's shoulder. I'm sorry about your wife, about your savings, about all of it. Jerome wiped his eyes. Can you prove it? Can you actually take her down? I don't know, Marcus admitted, but I'm going to try. He walked out into the cold New York night. The city was alive around him, taxis honking, people rushing past. The eternal energy of Manhattan that never slept, never stopped, never cared about the dramas unfolding in its restaurants and boardrooms. Marcus pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls. 2 from numbers he didn't recognize. 1 from his mother. He called her back immediately. Marcus. Her voice was worried. Baby, what's going on? I just got a call from some woman asking about you. Asking about Amelia, where she goes to school, what time she gets picked up. Marcus's blood went cold. What woman? What did she say exactly? She said she was from the school district, doing a survey. But something felt wrong, Marcus. She was asking specific questions, too specific. Victoria. It had to be Victoria. Already moving, already gathering information. Mom, listen to me carefully. I need you to pick up Amelia from school tomorrow. Don't let her take the bus. Pick her up yourself and bring her to your place. Can you do that? Marcus, you're scaring me. What's happening? I'll explain everything when I get there. I'm coming to pick her up right now. Is she asleep? She's been asleep for hours. She's fine, baby. She's safe. Keep her safe, Mom. Please, I'm on my way. He hung up and started walking faster toward the subway station. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know where your daughter goes to school. I know where your mother lives. I know everything about you, Marcus Thompson, and I'm just getting started. Marcus stared at the message. Victoria Harrington had declared war, and she was targeting his family. Something shifted inside him. The careful, controlled man who had spent 14 months avoiding conflict, avoiding attention, avoiding everything that man was gone. In his place stood someone else. Someone who had put criminals in prison for 7 years. Someone who had faced down mob lawyers and corrupt politicians and never blinked. Someone who knew how to fight. He typed a response. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Then he deleted it without sending. No. He wouldn't play her game. He wouldn't respond to threats with threats. That's what she wanted. That's how she operated. He would respond with something far more dangerous. The truth. Marcus made another call. A number he hadn't dialed in 3 years. A number he thought he'd never use again. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Well, well, well. Marcus Thompson, I thought you were dead. Not dead, Diana. Just hibernating. Diana Park, senior investigator with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They had worked together on 6 cases. She was brilliant, relentless, and she hated corporate criminals with a passion that bordered on obsession. Hibernating. Diana laughed. Is that what we're calling it? You disappeared, Marcus. Dropped off the face of the earth. I heard rumors you were working at a restaurant. The rumors were true. A Harvard law graduate. A prosecutor with a perfect record. Pouring wine for billionaires. She paused. Your wife. I heard about what happened. I'm sorry, Marcus. I wanted to reach out, but... It's okay. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. And now... Marcus took a deep breath. Now I'm ready to work. Diana, I have information about Victoria Harrington. Real information. The kind that could bring her down. The line went silent. Victoria Harrington. Diana finally said. You're talking about one of the most powerful people in finance. She has lawyers that make sharks look friendly. She has connections in every regulatory agency in the country, including mine. I know. If you're wrong, she'll destroy you. If you're right, she'll try to destroy you anyway. I know that too. Then why? Diana asked. Why come out of hiding for this? Marcus thought of Victoria's words. People like you don't deserve to exist. He thought of Jerome's wife losing her retirement. He thought of Robert Chen forced into silence. He thought of all the victims who had been crushed by Victoria's greed and never received justice. And he thought of Amelia. Daddy, why do some people treat you mean? Because someone has to, Marcus said. Because she's been hurting people for years and getting away with it. Because she threatened my daughter tonight, Diana. My 7-year-old daughter. And I will not let that stand. Diana was quiet for a moment. You know this is going to be a war, she said. Not a case. A war. I know. And you know that once you start, there's no going back. No hiding. No more anonymity. I know. Then come in tomorrow, 9 a.m. My office. Bring everything you have. Diana's voice hardened. Victoria Harrington has been on my radar for years. Every time we get close, evidence disappears. Witnesses recant. Cases get killed from above. But if you have what you say you have, I do. Then maybe it's finally time to take the queen off the board. Marcus ended the call. He stood on the subway platform waiting for the train that would take him to Brooklyn, to his mother's house, to his daughter. His phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You should have stayed invisible, Marcus. Now it's too late. Marcus read the message. Then he smiled. Victoria Harrington thought she was hunting him. She had no idea he was the one who had been waiting. 14 months of watching, 14 months of listening, 14 months of remembering every name, every case, every connection. He had never really stopped being a prosecutor. He had just been gathering evidence, and now, finally, he was ready to use it. The train arrived. Marcus stepped on board. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. Marcus arrived at his mother's house just after midnight. The door opened before he could knock. Gloria Thompson stood there in her housecoat, her gray hair tied back, her eyes filled with the kind of worry only a mother could carry. She's asleep, Gloria said immediately. I checked on her 3 times. She's fine. Marcus walked past her into the small living room. The house smelled like lavender and old books, exactly the way it had smelled his entire childhood. Nothing ever changed here. Nothing except everything outside these walls. Marcus, his mother's voice was firm now. Sit down. Tell me what's happening. He sat on the worn couch, the same couch where his father had taught him to read, where his mother had held him after his father's funeral, where he had told his parents he got into Harvard Law. I did something tonight, Mom. What kind of something? Marcus looked at his hands, the same hands that had held the water pitcher, the same hands that had pointed at Victoria Harrington while he dismantled her lies. I stood up to someone I should have stayed away from. Someone powerful. Someone dangerous. He met his mother's eyes. And now she's threatening Amelia. Gloria's face hardened. For a moment, Marcus saw the woman who had raised him alone after his father died. The woman who had worked 3 jobs and never complained. The woman who had faced down landlords and bill collectors and never backed down. Who is this person? Gloria asked. Victoria Harrington. His mother's eyes widened. The Victoria Harrington. The one who's always on the news. Yes. Lord have mercy. Gloria sat down heavily in the chair across from him. Marcus, what did you do? So he told her. Everything. The whine in his face, the insults about his father, the revelation of his true identity, the threats, all of it. When he finished, Gloria was silent for a long moment. Your father would be proud of you, she finally said. Marcus looked up surprised. You're not angry? Angry. Gloria laughed softly. Baby, I've been waiting 14 months for you to wake up. Ever since Lisa passed, you've been sleepwalking through life, hiding, running, pretending to be less than you are. She reached over and took his hands. That's not the boy I raised. That's not the man your father would have wanted you to be. I was trying to protect Amelia, to give her stability. You were trying to protect yourself, Gloria corrected gently. And I understand why. Lord knows I understand. Losing Lisa broke something in you. But hiding from the world isn't protection, Marcus. It's just a slower way of dying. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. He blinked them back. She's going to come after us, Mom. Victoria. She has resources I can't match. Money I can't fight. If she decides to make our lives hell, then we face it together. Gloria's voice was steel. The Thompson family doesn't run from bullies. Never has. Your father faced down racism in the Marine Corps. I faced down men who told me a black woman couldn't raise a son alone. And you faced down criminals who thought they were above the law. She squeezed his hands. We don't run. We fight. What if I lose? What if you win? Gloria countered. What if this is the moment everything changes? What if standing up to this woman is exactly what you were meant to do? Marcus thought about Diana Park, about the SEC investigation, about all the victims Victoria had crushed over the years. There's something else, Mom. I'm not just going to defend myself. I'm going to take her down, all the way down. Gloria smiled. It was a fierce smile full of pride. That's my boy, she said. That's my son. Marcus slept on his mother's couch that night, Amelia's small body curled against his chest. She had woken up when he arrived, insisted on being with her daddy, and fallen back asleep within minutes. He lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathe, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Lisa's face floated through his mind. Her laugh, her strength, the way she had looked at him on their wedding day. I wish you were here, he whispered into the darkness. I wish you could tell me I'm doing the right thing. Amelia stirred in her sleep. Mommy says you're brave, she mumbled, half dreaming. She told me. Marcus held her tighter. Maybe Lisa was still watching over them after all. The next morning, Marcus dropped Amelia at his mother's house with strict instructions. No school, no going outside, no answering the door for anyone she didn't recognize. Daddy, am I in trouble? Amelia asked, her small face worried. Marcus knelt down to her level. No, baby. You're not in trouble. Daddy just needs to take care of some grown-up stuff. And while I do that, I need you to stay with Grandma and be my brave girl. Can you do that? Amelia nodded solemnly. I can be brave. Mommy said I'm the bravest. She was right. Marcus kissed her forehead. I love you, baby girl, more than anything in the world. I love you too, Daddy. Go be brave too. He walked out into the gray Brooklyn morning and headed for Manhattan. The SEC office was in a nondescript building in the financial district, the kind of building you walked past 1,000 times without noticing. That was intentional. The people who worked here didn't want to be noticed. They wanted to watch. Diana Park was waiting for him in the lobby. She looked exactly the same as he remembered. Sharp eyes behind practical glasses. Hair pulled back tight. A suit that was all business and no nonsense. Marcus Thompson, she said, shaking his hand. Back from the dead. Not dead, just dormant. Same difference. She led him through security into an elevator up to the 7th floor. I pulled your file this morning. 14 cases, 14 convictions, 0 losses. You were one of the best prosecutors in the Southern District. I had good cases. You had talent. Diana glanced at him. And then you walked away. Everyone wondered why. My wife was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I couldn't be working 80-hour weeks while she was dying. Diana nodded slowly. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Most people didn't. I kept it private. They entered a conference room. Files were already spread across the table. A whiteboard covered one wall filled with names and arrows and question marks. Victoria Harrington, Diana said, gesturing at the board. I've been building this case for 3 years. Every time we get close, something happens. Witnesses disappear. Evidence gets lost. Lawyers file motions that bury us in paperwork. She's smart, Marcus. Smarter than almost anyone I've ever investigated. She's not smart. She's connected. Marcus studied the board. These names. I recognize some of them. Senator Mitchell, Judge Holloway, Commissioner Barnes. All recipients of generous campaign donations or charitable contributions from Harrington-affiliated organizations. Diana crossed her arms. She's built a network of protection that spans politics, law enforcement, and the judiciary. Attacking her head-on is suicide. Then we don't attack her head-on. Diana raised an eyebrow. What do you suggest? Marcus walked to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker and drew a new circle. David Chen, he said, writing the name. Victoria's CFO. He's been with her for 15 years. He knows everything. We've tried approaching Chen. He won't talk. He wouldn't talk 3 years ago, but things have changed. Marcus drew a line connecting Chen to Victoria. Last night I mentioned the SEC investigation in front of Victoria. I told her that Chen had already been interviewed, that the whistleblower had evidence connecting him to the fraud. Diana's eyes widened. You what? I bluffed. But Victoria doesn't know that. Right now she's wondering if Chen has flipped. She's wondering if her most trusted lieutenant is betraying her. And people like Victoria, paranoid people controlling people, they don't handle that kind of uncertainty well. You're trying to turn her against her own people. I'm trying to create chaos. Marcus drew more lines on the board. Victoria's empire is built on loyalty, or what she thinks is loyalty, but it's really just fear. Everyone who works for her is afraid of her. The moment they think she's going down, they'll start looking for lifeboats. Diana studied the board. It's risky. If she finds out you were bluffing, she'll know we don't have as much as she thinks. She won't find out, because by the time she starts asking questions, I'm going to make sure Chen is so paranoid that he doesn't trust anyone, including her. How? Marcus smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. I know people who know people, he said. Some of my old sources are still active, still listening, and they owe me favors. Diana was quiet for a moment, then she laughed. 3 years, she said. 3 years I've been trying to crack this case, and in one night you've given me more momentum than I've had in months. I'm motivated. Because she insulted you. Because she threatened my daughter. Marcus's voice was ice. There's nothing I won't do to protect Amelia. Nothing. Diana nodded slowly. Then let's get to work. They spent the next 4 hours going through files, case histories, financial records, witness statements. Marcus absorbed it all, his prosecutor's mind clicking back into gear like an engine that had been idle too long. By noon, they had a plan. By 2 o'clock, the first calls were made. By 4 o'clock, Marcus received a text from an unknown number. You think you can hide from me? I know you're at the SEC building. I know you're talking to Diana Park. I have eyes everywhere. Marcus showed the text to Diana. She's tracking you, Diana said, frowning. She's trying to intimidate me. Marcus typed a response. Good. Then you know what's coming. He hit send. Diana looked at him with something like admiration. You're not afraid of her, are you? I'm terrified, Marcus admitted. But fear doesn't stop me from doing what's right. It never has. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Marcus Thompson. Victoria's voice was smooth, controlled. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Ms. Harrington. I think we do. I've done some research on you. Impressive resume. Harvard Law. Federal prosecutor. Perfect conviction record. And then you threw it all away to pour wine for people like me. Such a waste. I didn't throw anything away. I made a choice. The wrong choice, Victoria replied. But maybe we can fix that. I'm prepared to offer you a position at Harrington Capital. General counsel, 7 figures, stock options, full benefits. All you have to do is walk away from whatever you're planning with the SEC. Marcus laughed. You think you can buy me? Everyone has a price. Not me. Really? What about your daughter? What's her price? What would you do to keep her safe? Marcus's blood went cold. Is that a threat? It's a question. You're a smart man, Marcus. Smart enough to know that fighting me is a losing battle. I have resources you can't imagine, connections you can't touch, and a willingness to do whatever it takes to protect what's mine. Victoria's voice dropped lower. Take the deal. Walk away. And I'll forget this ever happened. Your daughter can go back to her normal life. Your mother can stay in that nice little house in Brooklyn. Everyone wins. And if I refuse, then everyone loses. Victoria paused. Think about it, Marcus. You have until midnight tonight. After that, my offer expires, and so does my patience. She hung up. Marcus stared at his phone. Diana had been listening. Her face was tight with anger. She just offered you a bribe and threatened your family in the same conversation, Diana said. We can use this if you recorded, I didn't. Then it's your word against hers. My word against a billionaire's. Marcus shook his head. That won't be enough. Then what do we do? Marcus thought about it. The offer, the threat, the deadline, midnight. Victoria was giving him 8 hours to make a decision. 8 hours. We accelerate the timeline, Marcus said. Whatever we were planning to do over the next few weeks, we do it now, tonight, before midnight. That's impossible. We're not ready. Then we get ready. Marcus grabbed his jacket. I need to make some calls. Old friends, people who know things, people who have evidence Victoria thinks was destroyed years ago. What kind of evidence? The kind that puts people in prison. Marcus headed for the door. Meet me back here at 8 o'clock. And Diana, bring everyone you trust. Everyone. We're going to need all the help we can get. Marcus spent the next 4 hours calling in every favor he'd ever earned. Tom Richards, his old colleague from the prosecutor's office. Tom had files on the Morrison Pension Fund case that had never been officially submitted. Files that connected the fund's collapse directly to Harrington Capital. Sandra Lopez, a forensic accountant who had worked on the Greenfield environmental scandal. She had copies of documents that Victoria's lawyers had ordered destroyed. Michael Okonkwo, a journalist who had been investigating Victoria for years but could never get enough evidence to publish. He had interviews with former employees, anonymous sources who had been too afraid to go on record. One by one, they agreed to help. One by one, the pieces fell into place. By 7 o'clock, Marcus had enough evidence to bury Victoria Harrington 10 times over. The question was whether he could use it before she destroyed him first. He was walking toward the subway when his phone rang again. Not an unknown number this time. His mother. Marcus. Her voice was shaking. Someone was here, at the house. A man in a suit. He said he was from Child Protective Services. He said there had been a complaint, that they needed to interview Amelia. Marcus's heart stopped. What did you do? I didn't let him in. I told him to come back with a court order. Gloria's voice steadied. But Marcus, he was lying. I know he was lying. CPS doesn't send people at 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. Victoria. She was escalating. Where's Amelia now? She's with me, in the house. All the doors are locked. Gloria paused. Marcus, what do we do? Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone. I'm coming. No. His mother's voice was firm. Don't come here. That's what she wants. She wants you scared. She wants you running to protect us instead of fighting her. Mom. Marcus Thompson, you listen to me. Gloria's voice was the same voice that had raised him. The voice that had taught him right from wrong. The voice that had never, ever backed down from a fight. Your father didn't raise a coward. I didn't raise a coward. You go do what you need to do. Amelia and I will be fine. We Thompson women are tough. Marcus closed his eyes. His mother was right. If he ran home now, Victoria won. She would know she could control him through fear. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, baby. Now go make that woman wish she'd never been born." He hung up and changed direction. Not home. Back to the SEC. It was time to end this. Diana was waiting when he arrived. She wasn't alone. 2 other investigators flanked her along with a man in an expensive suit who looked deeply uncomfortable. "Marcus," Diana said, "I'd like you to meet David Chen." Marcus froze. David Chen, Victoria's CFO. The man who knew everything. The man who was supposed to be Victoria's most loyal soldier. Chen stepped forward. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "I understand you've been talking about me." "I mentioned your name," Marcus admitted. "I may have suggested you were cooperating with the investigation." "I wasn't. Not until about 3 hours ago." Marcus looked at Diana. "What happened?" "Victoria called him," Diana explained. "Right after she called you. She demanded to know if he'd betrayed her, threatened him, told him she would destroy his family if he had been talking to the SEC. Chen laughed bitterly. 15 years. 15 years I've been loyal to that woman. I've done things I'm not proud of. And the moment she thinks I might be a liability, she threatens my children." "So you decided to actually cooperate," Marcus said. "I decided to protect my family." Chen met his eyes. "I know where all the bodies are buried, Mr. Thompson. Every false document, every bribed official, every destroyed piece of evidence. I kept copies. Insurance, I called it. I never thought I'd actually use them. Until now." Until now. Chen opened his briefcase. Inside were dozens of files, hard drives, flash drives. "This is everything. Every crime Victoria Harrington has committed for the last 15 years. Every person she's hurt. Every law she's broken." Marcus looked at the evidence, at the files that could bring down one of the most powerful women in America. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Really?" Chen was quiet for a moment. "My mother worked 2 jobs her whole life," he finally said. "She cleaned houses for rich people so I could go to college, so I could have a better life. And somewhere along the way, I forgot where I came from. I forgot what she sacrificed." He looked at Marcus. "Last night I watched a video. Someone recorded what you did at that restaurant, what you said, how you stood up to her. That video is online. It's everywhere. 3 million views and counting." Chen smiled slightly. "You reminded me of something, Mr. Thompson. You reminded me that no matter how powerful someone is, they're not above the truth. They're not above justice." He pushed the briefcase forward. "So here's the truth. Do something with it." Marcus looked at Diana. Diana looked at the briefcase. Then she smiled. "Mr. Chen," she said, "welcome to the right side of history." They worked through the night. By 11 o'clock, they had assembled a case that would have taken months under normal circumstances. By 11:30, Diana was on the phone with the U.S. Attorney's Office. At exactly midnight, Victoria Harrington's deadline federal agents knocked on the door of her Manhattan penthouse. Marcus watched from across the street as they led her out in handcuffs. She saw him. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Marcus saw something he'd never expected to see in Victoria Harrington's face. Fear. Real, genuine, absolute fear. The kind of fear she had inflicted on so many others. The kind of fear she thought she would never feel herself. She opened her mouth to say something. A threat. A curse. A final attempt at intimidation. But no words came out, because in the end there was nothing left to say. The truth had won. The news broke at 6 a.m. Every major network led with the same story. Victoria Harrington, CEO of Harrington Capital, arrested on 17 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and witness intimidation. The Queen of Wall Street dethroned in handcuffs. Marcus watched the coverage from his mother's living room. Amelia still asleep in the bedroom, Gloria sitting beside him, with a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Federal authorities executed the arrest shortly after midnight, the news anchor reported. Sources say the investigation was accelerated after new evidence emerged from an unexpected source. A former federal prosecutor who had been working undercover as a waiter at one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Undercover, Gloria snorted. You weren't undercover. You were hiding. Same result, Marcus said quietly. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since 4 a.m. Reporters, old colleagues, numbers he didn't recognize. He'd turned it to silent an hour ago. The video of the confrontation at the Monarch restaurant has now been viewed over 12 million times, the anchor continued. Social media has dubbed Thompson the waiter who took down Wall Street. The hashtag Justice Served is trending worldwide. Gloria shook her head slowly. 12 million people watched my son get wine thrown in his face. 12 million people watched me stand up, Marcus corrected. That's different. His phone lit up again. This time he recognized the number. Diana Park. Marcus. Her voice was exhausted, but triumphant. How are you holding up? I'm not sure yet. It doesn't feel real. It's real, trust me. Victoria's lawyers have been calling non-stop since midnight. They're already trying to negotiate a plea deal. She's terrified, Marcus. Actually, genuinely terrified. Good. There's something else. Diana paused. The U.S. attorney wants to meet with you, today if possible. They're building the case for trial, and they want you involved. Involved how? As a consultant, maybe more. They're talking about offering you your old job back. Lead prosecutor on the Harrington case. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. His old job. The career he'd walked away from 3 years ago when Lisa got sick. The life he'd abandoned because he thought he couldn't handle it anymore. I need to think about it, he said. Don't think too long. This case is moving fast, and there are a lot of people who want to see Victoria Harrington pay for what she's done. You could be the one who makes that happen. Marcus hung up and stared at the phone in his hands. What did she say? Gloria asked. They want me back. The prosecutor's office. They want me to lead the case against Victoria. Gloria was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and put her hand on his arm. What do you want? She asked. Marcus thought about it. Really thought about it. For 14 months he had wanted peace. Silence. Invisibility. He had wanted to disappear into the background and never be noticed again. But that wasn't who he was. It had never been who he was. I want to finish what I started, he said finally. I want to make sure she pays for everything she's done. Not just to me, to everyone. Gloria smiled. That's my boy. The door to the bedroom opened. Amelia stood there in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, why is your picture on TV? Marcus looked at the screen. His face was everywhere. The video from the restaurant playing on a loop. Him standing there, wine dripping down his face, speaking truth to power. Come here, baby girl. He opened his arms. Amelia ran to him, climbing into his lap. Daddy did something important last night, he said, holding her close. I stood up to a very bad person. A person who was hurting a lot of people. Amelia looked at the TV, then back at him. Did you win? Marcus smiled. I think so, sweetheart. I think so. The next few days were chaos. Marcus met with the U.S. Attorney's Office. They offered him exactly what Diana had described. Lead prosecutor on United States versus Harrington. Full resources. Full authority. A chance to finish what he'd started 14 months ago when he'd first seen Victoria's name cross his desk. He accepted. The media couldn't get enough of the story. The waiter who was secretly a Harvard-educated prosecutor. The single father who took down a billionaire. The underdog who won. They called him a hero. Marcus didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had finally stopped running from himself. The interviews started almost immediately. Morning shows, cable news, magazine profiles. Everyone wanted to talk to the man who had brought down Victoria Harrington. He turned most of them down. He had work to do, a case to build, a trial to prepare for. But there was one interview he couldn't refuse. Jerome Williams, the elderly waiter from the Monarch, called him a week after the arrest. "Mr. Thompson." Jerome's voice was thick with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me, Jerome." "Yes, I do. My wife. Margaret. She lost everything when Greenfield collapsed. Our savings, our retirement, our dignity. She blamed herself for years. Said she should have been smarter, should have seen through the lies." Jerome's voice cracked. "She died last year. Cancer. And her last words to me were that she was sorry. Sorry for losing our money. Sorry for being fooled." Marcus closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, Jerome. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be proud." Jerome took a breath. "Yesterday a reporter called me. Said they were doing a story on Victoria's victims. Said they wanted to hear Margaret's story. For the first time someone cared. Someone wanted to know what happened to us." "Your wife deserved better," Marcus said quietly. "She did. They all did. Every person Victoria Harrington destroyed, every family she tore apart, every dream she crushed." Jerome paused. "But because of you, people are finally listening. Because of you, Margaret's story will be told. That matters, Mr. Thompson. That matters more than you know." After they hung up, Marcus sat alone in his apartment for a long time. He thought about all the Jeromes out there. All the people who had suffered in silence because no one would listen. No one would believe them. No one would fight for them. That's what prosecutors did. They fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. He had forgotten that somewhere along the way, buried under grief and exhaustion and the weight of losing Lisa. But he remembered now. The trial preparation was grueling. Victoria's legal team was exactly what Marcus expected. The best money could buy. A dozen attorneys from 3 different firms all working around the clock to save their client. They filed motion after motion. Delay tactics, discovery disputes, constitutional challenges, every trick in the book. But Marcus had tricks of his own. David Chen was the key witness. His testimony would tie everything together. The falsified documents, the bribed officials, the threatened families, all of it. Chen was nervous. That was understandable. He was testifying against a woman who had promised to destroy anyone who betrayed her. "What if she gets off?" Chen asked during one of their prep sessions. "What if the jury doesn't believe me? What if her lawyers tear me apart?" "They won't," Marcus said firmly. "How can you be sure?" "Because I've done this before. 14 cases, 14 convictions. I know how to prepare a witness, and I know how to win." Chen looked at him with something like desperation. "I'm risking everything, Mr. Thompson. My career, my family, my life. If this goes wrong..." "It won't go wrong." Marcus leaned forward. "David, listen to me. Victoria Harrington has spent her entire life making people afraid. That's how she controls them. That's how she wins. But fear only works if you let it. The moment you decide to stop being afraid, she loses power over you." "Is that what happened to you?" Chen asked. "At the restaurant, you decided to stop being afraid." Marcus thought about that night. The wine in his face, the insults, the humiliation, and then the moment when something inside him broke, or maybe the moment when something inside him finally healed. "I decided to remember who I was," he said. "I decided that being invisible wasn't protecting me. It was killing me, slowly, bit by bit." He met Chen's eyes. "You spent 15 years being afraid of Victoria Harrington. 15 years doing things you're not proud of because you were scared of what she might do if you refused. How did that work out for you?" Chen was silent. "The only way out is through," Marcus continued, Testify. Tell the truth. Let the world see who she really is. And then finally, you'll be free. Chen took a deep breath. Okay, I'll do it. Good. Now let's go over your testimony again. The trial began in April. 6 months of preparation, thousands of documents, dozens of witnesses, and finally, the moment of truth. The courtroom was packed. Media, spectators, victims and their families. Everyone wanted to see Victoria Harrington face justice. She sat at the defense table looking like she owned the room. Even in her circumstances, even facing decades in prison, she projected an air of absolute confidence. Marcus knew it was an act. He'd seen her face when the handcuffs clicked. He'd seen the fear beneath the mask. The prosecution went first. Marcus laid out the case piece by piece. The fraudulent investments, the destroyed retirement accounts, the threatened witnesses, the lives ruined by greed. He called his witnesses one by one. Victims who had lost everything, former employees who had been too afraid to speak, financial experts who explained exactly how Victoria had stolen millions. And then, finally, David Chen took the stand. Victoria's lawyers had tried everything to exclude his testimony. They had argued he was unreliable, that he had been coerced, that his evidence was obtained illegally. Every motion was denied. Now Chen sat in the witness box facing the woman who had controlled his life for 15 years. Mr. Chen, Marcus began, can you describe your role at Harrington Capital? I was the chief financial officer. I oversaw all financial operations for the company. And in that role, were you aware of any illegal activities? Chen's eyes flickered to Victoria. Just for a second. She was staring at him. That cold, calculating stare that had kept him in line for so long. But Marcus was staring at him too. And in Marcus's eyes, Chen saw something different. Not threat, not control, just quiet encouragement. You can do this. Tell the truth. Chen took a breath. Yes, he said. I was aware of numerous illegal activities. Can you describe them for the jury? And Chen did. For 3 hours, he described everything. The falsified documents, the bribed officials, the threatened families, the destroyed evidence, every dirty secret Victoria Harrington had ever buried. The jury listened in horror. Victoria's face remained impassive, but Marcus could see her hands clenched under the table, her knuckles white with tension. When Chen finished, Victoria's lead attorney stood for cross-examination. Mr. Chen, he said smoothly, you've just described a long list of crimes, crimes you participated in, crimes you helped cover up. Why should this jury believe anything you say? Because I'm telling the truth, Chen replied. Are you? Or are you just trying to save yourself? After all, you've been granted immunity in exchange for your testimony. You won't face any consequences for the crimes you've admitted to. Isn't that convenient? It wasn't about saving myself. Chen's voice was steady now, stronger than it had been during the entire preparation process. It was about doing what was right, finally. Oh, I see. So after 15 years of doing wrong, you suddenly had a change of heart. How noble. The lawyer's voice dripped with sarcasm. Yes, Chen said simply. I watched a man stand up to Victoria Harrington when no one else would. A man who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. He reminded me that some things are more important than being safe. Some things are worth risking everything for. Chen looked at Marcus. The truth is one of those things. The lawyer tried to shake him. For another 2 hours, he attacked Chen's credibility, his motives, his character. But Chen held firm. When it was over, Marcus knew they had won. Not the case. Not yet. The jury would decide that. But they had won something more important. They had broken Victoria Harrington's power over the people she had controlled. They had shown that it was possible to stand up, to speak out, to tell the truth even when it was terrifying. And nothing could undo that. The jury deliberated for 3 days. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of wondering. 3 days of Marcus pacing his apartment at night while Amelia slept and Gloria made coffee she didn't drink. On the morning of the 4th day, the call came. "Verdict's in," Diana said. "Get down here." The courtroom was even more packed than before. Every seat filled, people standing in the back, the weight of anticipation pressing down on everyone. Victoria sat at the defense table, still composed, still projecting confidence. But Marcus could see it now. The hairline cracks in her armor, the slight tremor in her hands. The jury filed in. 12 ordinary people who held Victoria Harrington's fate in their hands. The judge turned to them. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. "We have, Your Honor." "What say you?" The foreperson looked down at the paper in her hands. "On the first count, securities fraud, we find the defendant guilty." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "On the second count, wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty." Victoria's face didn't change, but her hands were shaking now, visibly shaking. "On the third count, money laundering, we find the defendant guilty." Count after count after count. 17 charges, 17 guilty verdicts. By the end, Victoria Harrington's mask had finally cracked. Tears streamed down her face. Not tears of remorse, tears of disbelief. She had truly thought she was untouchable. She wasn't. The judge set sentencing for the following month. Victoria was remanded to custody pending sentencing. As the bailiffs led her out, she passed Marcus. For a moment, their eyes met. "This isn't over," she whispered. "I still have resources. I still have connections. I will appeal. I will get out. And when I do—" "When you do, I'll be waiting," Marcus interrupted calmly. "And I'll do exactly what I did before. I'll tell the truth. And I'll win." Victoria's face twisted with hatred, but she had no words left. The bailiffs led her away, and it was over. Marcus walked out of the courthouse into a wall of cameras and reporters. "Mr. Thompson, how does it feel to win?" "Mr. Thompson, what's your message to Victoria Harrington?" "Mr. Thompson, what's next for you?" He stopped at the top of the courthouse steps. A sea of faces looked up at him. Reporters, spectators, victims who had come to see justice done. And in the back of the crowd, 2 faces he knew better than any others. Gloria holding Amelia's hand. Amelia holding a sign she had made herself. Crude letters in colored marker. "My daddy is my hero." Marcus smiled. "What's next?" He repeated the reporter's question. "I'm going to go home. I'm going to hug my daughter. And I'm going to remember why I do this job." He paused. "I'm going to remember that justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about giving voice to the voiceless. It's about standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. It's about remembering that no one is above the truth, no matter how rich, no matter how powerful, no matter how connected." He looked directly into the cameras. Victoria Harrington thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. And to anyone else out there who thinks they can hurt people without consequences, who thinks they can destroy lives and walk away, I have a message for you. He let the silence stretch. "We're watching. We're waiting. And we will hold you accountable." He walked down the steps through the crowd to where his mother and daughter were waiting. Amelia dropped her sign and ran to him. "Daddy, Daddy, you won." He caught her, lifting her into his arms, holding her tight. "We won, baby girl. We all won." Gloria reached them, tears streaming down her face. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. "So proud." Marcus held his mother with one arm, his daughter with the other. 3 generations of Thompsons standing together on the courthouse steps. Survivors, fighters, family. "Let's go home," Marcus said, and they did. 6 weeks later, Marcus stood in the same courtroom for Victoria Harrington's sentencing. The room was quieter now. Fewer reporters, fewer spectators. The media circus had moved on to other stories, other scandals. But the people who mattered were still there. The victims, the families, the ones who had waited years for this moment. Jerome Williams sat in the front row clutching a photograph of his wife Margaret. Beside him sat Patricia Mendez, the single mother who had lost her home. Behind them, Robert Chen's daughter, the one whose medical records Victoria had threatened to expose. Dozens of faces, dozens of stories, dozens of lives destroyed by one woman's greed. Victoria was brought in by bailiffs. She looked different now. 6 weeks in custody had stripped away some of her polish. Her hair was grayer. Her face was thinner. The designer suits had been replaced by prison orange, but her eyes were the same, cold, calculating, defiant. She scanned the courtroom until she found Marcus, and she smiled. It was a strange smile. Not triumphant, not defeated. Something else entirely. Something that made Marcus's stomach tighten. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Be seated. Judge Eleanor Washington was in her 60s, a veteran of the federal bench with a reputation for fairness and absolutely zero tolerance for wealthy defendants who thought they could buy their way out of consequences. We are here today for the sentencing of Victoria Harrington, Judge Washington began. The defendant has been convicted on 17 counts, including securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and witness intimidation. Before I announce the sentence, I will hear victim impact statements. One by one they came forward. Jerome Williams spoke first. His voice shook as he described Margaret. How they had met in high school. How they had built a life together. How Victoria's fraud had stolen their retirement and broken Margaret's spirit. My wife died believing she had failed us. Jerome said, tears streaming down his face. She died apologizing for losing our money. She never understood that she wasn't the failure. The failure was the system that allowed people like Victoria Harrington to exist. The system that protected the powerful and abandoned the weak. He looked directly at Victoria. I hope you remember her face. I hope you remember all our faces. Every night for the rest of your life. Patricia Mendez spoke next. She described working 3 jobs after losing her home, moving her children into a shelter, watching her son drop out of college because they couldn't afford tuition anymore. You took everything from us, Patricia said, her voice steady despite the tears. And you didn't care. We were just numbers to you, just obstacles to be removed so you could get richer. Robert Chen's daughter spoke last. She was young, barely 25, but she spoke with a strength that belied her age. You threatened to expose my medical history to destroy my father, she said. You tried to use my illness as a weapon. Do you know what that feels like? To have someone treat your pain, your vulnerability as a tool for blackmail? She paused. I used to be afraid of you. I used to have nightmares about what you might do. But I'm not afraid anymore. Because I learned something important. People like you only have power as long as we give it to you. The moment we stop being afraid, you become exactly what you always were. Nothing. Victoria's smile flickered, just for a second. But Marcus saw it. The mask was cracking. Judge Washington listened to each statement with careful attention. When they were finished, she turned to Victoria. Does the defendant wish to make a statement before sentencing? Victoria's lawyer started to rise, but Victoria waved him down. I'll speak for myself, she said. She stood slowly, straightening her orange jumpsuit with as much dignity as she could muster. Your Honor, I want to say something to everyone in this room. The courtroom went silent. For 30 years, I built an empire. I created thousands of jobs. I generated billions of dollars in wealth. I was featured on magazine covers, invited to presidential dinners, celebrated as a pioneer and a visionary. Victoria's voice was calm, measured. And now I stand here convicted of crimes, about to be sentenced to prison. Do you know what I feel? She paused. I feel betrayed. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Not by David Chen, not by Marcus Thompson, by the system that pretended to admire me while waiting for the moment to tear me down. Everyone in this room, The prosecutors, the judge, the so-called victims, you all benefited from people like me. Your retirement accounts grew because of investments I made. Your jobs existed because of companies I funded. Your economy thrived because of risks I took. Her voice rose. And now you want to punish me for playing the game better than anyone else, for winning. Judge Washington's face was stone. Are you finished, Ms. Harrington? No, I have one more thing to say. Victoria turned to look directly at Marcus. You think you've won, Mr. Thompson. You think this is victory. But you don't understand how the world really works. I have money in accounts you'll never find. I have allies in places you can't imagine. This conviction will be appealed. This sentence will be reduced. And one day I will walk out of whatever prison you send me to, and I will still be Victoria Harrington. She smiled again, that strange, unsettling smile. Can you say the same? Will you still be Marcus Thompson? Or will you be just another forgotten footnote in a story about a woman who was too big to fail? The courtroom was frozen. Marcus stood up slowly. Your Honor, may I respond? Judge Washington nodded. You may. Marcus walked to the front of the courtroom. He didn't look at Victoria. He looked at the victims, at Jerome, at Patricia, at all the faces he had come to know over the past 6 months. Ms. Harrington asked if I think I've won, he said quietly. The answer is no. I don't think I've won, because this isn't about winning. This isn't about me versus her. This isn't a game. He turned to face Victoria. You asked if I'll still be Marcus Thompson. Let me tell you who Marcus Thompson is. I'm the son of a Marine who served 3 tours in Vietnam and died because his government didn't take care of him. I'm the son of a woman who worked 3 jobs so I could go to college. I'm the husband of a woman who fought cancer for 2 years and never complained, never gave up, never stopped loving her family until her last breath. His voice strengthened. I'm the father of a 7-year-old girl who thinks I'm a hero, not because I took down a billionaire, but because I show up, every day, because I make her breakfast and walk her to the bus stop and read her stories at night, because I love her more than anything in this world and she knows it. He took a step closer to Victoria. That's who Marcus Thompson is, and that's who I'll be long after everyone has forgotten your name. Because the truth is, Ms. Harrington, you're not too big to fail. You already failed. The moment you decided that money was more important than people. The moment you decided that power meant you could hurt anyone without consequences. The moment you looked at a room full of human beings and saw nothing but obstacles. He shook his head. You failed 30 years ago. It just took this long for the world to notice. Marcus turned back to Judge Washington. I'm done, Your Honor. Thank you. He sat down. The courtroom was silent. Victoria's face had finally changed. The mask was gone. What remained was something raw, something almost human. Fear, rage, and underneath it all, the tiniest flicker of something that might have been regret. Judge Washington straightened her papers. I have heard the victim impact statements. I have heard the defendant's statement, and I have considered all factors relevant to sentencing. She looked at Victoria. Ms. Harrington, you were blessed with intelligence, education, and opportunity. You could have used those gifts to build something good. Instead, you used them to exploit, deceive, and destroy. You hurt people who trusted you. You stole from people who had nothing. You threatened families to protect your crimes. Her voice hardened. You showed no mercy to your victims. You showed no remorse for your actions. And even today, standing in this courtroom facing the consequences of your choices, you showed nothing but contempt for the people you harmed. Judge Washington leaned forward. The sentence of this court is as follows. On the 17 counts of which you have been convicted, I sentence you to 35 years in federal prison. You will serve a minimum of 25 years before being eligible for parole. Additionally, I am ordering the forfeiture of all assets obtained through your criminal enterprise to be distributed among your victims through a court-supervised restitution program. Victoria's face went white. 35 years, she whispered. That is correct. You will be 77 years old before you have any chance of release. I suggest you use that time to reflect on the choices that brought you here." Judge Washington struck her gavel. "This court is adjourned." The bailiffs moved toward Victoria. She seemed frozen, unable to process what had just happened. "This isn't right," she said, her voice rising. "This isn't fair. I built an empire. I created wealth. I employed thousands of people. You can't do this to me." "It's already done," Judge Washington said calmly. "Remove the defendant." As the bailiffs led Victoria away, she struggled against their grip. "Thompson," she screamed. "This isn't over. Do you hear me? This isn't over." Marcus didn't respond. He just watched as the woman who had thrown wine in his face, who had called him worthless, who had threatened his daughter, was dragged out of the courtroom like a common criminal. Because that's what she was, a common criminal who had thought she was uncommon. The moment Victoria was gone, something broke in the courtroom. The tension that had been building for months finally released. People were crying, hugging, laughing through tears. Jerome Williams approached Marcus with tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he said, grabbing Marcus's hand. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me, thank yourself. You were brave enough to testify, brave enough to tell Margaret's story." "Will you come visit her grave sometime?" Jerome asked. "I'd like to tell her about you, about what you did." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I'd be honored." Patricia Mendez was next. She hugged him without saying anything. No words were necessary. David Chen waited until the others had left. He looked different now, lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I couldn't have done this without you," Marcus said. "Yes, you could have," Chen replied. "You would have found another way. That's who you are." He paused. "What are you going to do now?" Marcus thought about the question. "I'm going to go home," he said. "I'm going to spend time with my daughter. And then I'm going to figure out what comes next." "The U.S. attorney offered you a permanent position." "They did." "Are you going to take it?" Marcus smiled. "I don't know yet. But I know I'm not going back to being invisible. Whatever I do, I'm going to keep fighting. For people who can't fight for themselves." Chen nodded. "Good. The world needs more people like you." He shook Marcus's hand and walked away. Diana Park was the last to approach. "Hell of a case," she said. "Hell of a partnership." Diana smiled. "You know, when you called me that night, I thought you were crazy. A former prosecutor working as a waiter calling me at midnight saying he could bring down Victoria Harrington. And now I think you're still crazy. But the good kind of crazy." She handed him a business card. "If you ever want to work together again, you know where to find me." Marcus took the card. "Thank you, Diana, for believing in me. Thank yourself. You did the hard part." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Your wife, Lisa, what would she think of all this?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "She'd say I waited too long," he finally said. "She'd say I should have stopped hiding years ago, and then she'd hug me and tell me she was proud." Diana smiled softly. "She sounds like she was something special." She was. Marcus looked at the empty courtroom. She really was. Marcus picked Amelia up from school that afternoon. She came running out the doors the moment she saw him, her backpack bouncing, her braids flying. "Daddy! Daddy! Everyone at school saw the news. They said you're famous." Marcus caught her, lifting her into his arms. "I'm not famous, baby girl. I'm just your daddy. My teacher said you're a hero. She said you took down a bad person who was hurting people." "I did what was right," Marcus said. "That's all." Amelia wrapped her arms around his neck. "I'm proud of you, Daddy." Those 4 words hit him harder than any verdict, any sentence, any headline. His daughter was proud of him. That was worth more than all the fame in the world. "Let's go get ice cream," he said. "Really, on a school day?" "Really, we're celebrating." "What are we celebrating?" Marcus thought about it. What were they celebrating? Victory, justice. The end of a chapter. We're celebrating being brave, he said, and being together, and being a family. Amelia grinned. Can I get 2 scoops? You can get 3. 3, Daddy. You never let me get 3. Today is special. He kissed her forehead. Today you can have whatever you want. They walked to the ice cream shop 3 blocks from the school. The same shop Marcus had taken Lisa to on their first date 20 years ago. The same shop where he had proposed. The same shop where they had celebrated Amelia's birth. Full circle. While Amelia worked on her 3 scoops of chocolate, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. I saw the news. 35 years. Your father is smiling in heaven. Come for dinner tonight. I'm making your favorite. Marcus smiled and typed back. We'll be there. Love you, Mom. Another text came in. This one from Raymond Chen, his old manager at the Monarch. Congratulations, Marcus. I always knew you were meant for bigger things. Come by the restaurant sometime. Dinner's on me. Forever. Then another. From Tom Richards, his old colleague from the prosecutor's office. Welcome back, counselor. The good guys won today. Let's get a drink soon. Then another, and another, and another. People he had worked with. People he had helped. People he had forgotten about who hadn't forgotten about him. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Daddy, who's texting you so much? Friends, baby. People I used to know. You have a lot of friends. Marcus looked at his phone. At all the names, all the connections he had thought he'd severed when he walked away from his life 3 years ago. I guess I do, he said softly. I guess I do. That night they had dinner at Gloria's house. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread. Marcus's favorite meal, the one his mother had made for every important occasion since he was a child. Amelia helped set the table, while Marcus and Gloria sat in the kitchen. 35 years, Gloria said, shaking her head. That woman is going to die in prison. Maybe. Or maybe she'll get out when she's 77 and spend her last years alone and forgotten. Marcus shrugged. Either way, she can't hurt anyone anymore. And what about you? What are you going to do now? Marcus had been thinking about that question all day. The U.S. attorney wants me back full-time, lead prosecutor for financial crimes. And I'm thinking about saying no. Gloria raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I don't want to spend the next 20 years in courtrooms. I want to do something different. Something that helps people before they become victims, not just after. What does that mean? Marcus pulled a business card from his pocket. The one Diana Park had given him. Diana mentioned a new initiative, a task force that works with communities to identify fraud before it spreads. Education, prevention, outreach. They need lawyers who understand both the legal system and the people it's supposed to protect. That sounds like you. It feels like me. Marcus paused. After Lisa died, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never practice law again, never fight for anything again. I was just going to disappear and raise Amelia and wait for the end. And now I realize that hiding wasn't protecting me, it was punishing me. For surviving when Lisa didn't, for not being able to save her. His voice cracked slightly. I thought I didn't deserve to live my life because she couldn't live hers. But that's not what she would have wanted. She would have wanted me to fight, to make a difference, to show Amelia what it means to stand up for what's right. Gloria reached across the table and took his hand. Your wife loved you more than anything in this world, and she would be so proud of the man you've become. I hope so. I know so. Gloria squeezed his hand. Now go help your daughter with the napkins. She's folding them all wrong. Dinner was perfect. Amelia chattered about school, about her friends, about the boy in her class who said mean things, until Amelia told him to stop, and he actually stopped. Just like you, Daddy, she said proudly. I stood up to him, and he listened. Marcus and Gloria exchanged a look. "That's my girl," Marcus said. After dinner, Amelia fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the excitement of the day. Marcus carried her to the car, buckled her in gently, and drove home. The city was quiet. Late night, streets nearly empty. Just Marcus and his daughter and the hum of the engine. He thought about everything that had led to this moment. The wine in his face, the insults, the decision to stop being invisible, the case, the trial, the verdict. And underneath it all, Lisa. She was everywhere in this story. In his motivation to be a better man. In his courage to stand up. In Amelia's eyes every time she looked at him. Lisa was gone. But she wasn't really gone. She lived in every choice he made. Every time he chose courage over fear. Every time he chose truth over silence. That was her legacy. And Marcus would spend the rest of his life honoring it. 3 months later, Marcus opened the doors to the Thompson Justice Initiative. A small office in Brooklyn. 3 rooms, 2 desks, 1 conference table. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. But it was his. The initiative was simple. Free legal education for communities targeted by financial predators. Early warning systems to identify fraud before it spread. And legal representation for victims who couldn't afford to fight back. His first client was an elderly woman named Beatrice, who had almost lost her life savings to a scam artist pretending to be a financial advisor. "I didn't know who else to call," Beatrice said, tears in her eyes. "Everyone told me I was stupid for trusting him. But you didn't. You just helped." "That's what we're here for," Marcus said. "No one should be called stupid for trusting someone. The criminals should be blamed for betraying that trust, not the victims." Word spread. More clients came, more stories, more opportunities to make a difference. Diana Park stopped by one afternoon 6 months after the initiative opened. "I heard you turned down the U.S. attorney again," she said. "I did. They offered you twice the salary." "They did." Diana looked around the small office, at the second-hand furniture, at the motivational posters Amelia had made, at the framed photo of Lisa on Marcus's desk. "You could be making millions in private practice," Diana said. "You could be a partner at any firm in the country." "Why this?" Marcus thought about the question. "Because this is where I'm supposed to be. Not in a courtroom fighting cases after people have already been hurt. Here, in the community, before the damage is done." That's a very idealistic answer. Maybe. But idealism isn't a bad thing. Not when it's backed up by action. Diana smiled. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just another prosecutor. Smart, ambitious, driven. But after everything that happened, you're different." "Different how?" "You actually care. Not about winning, not about your record, about the people." She shook her head. "That's rare, Marcus. Rarer than you know. I learned it from my wife, and my father, and my mother, and my daughter." Marcus smiled. "I'm not special, Diana. I'm just surrounded by people who taught me what matters." 1 year after Victoria Harrington's conviction, Marcus received an unexpected letter. No return address. Prison postmark. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in neat, precise handwriting. "Mr. Thompson, I have had a year to think about what happened. A year in a cell with nothing but time and my thoughts. And I want you to know something. I hate you. I hate you for destroying everything I built. I hate you for turning my own people against me. I hate you for standing in that courtroom and making me look small. But I also understand something now. Something I didn't understand before. You were right. I failed. Not when I was convicted. Not when I was sentenced. I failed 30 years ago when I decided that money was more important than people. When I looked at human beings and saw only tools to be used and discarded. I'm not apologizing. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve either. But I wanted you to know that your words stayed with me. That night at the restaurant. That day in the courtroom. You said things no one had ever said to me before. You treated me like I was accountable, like I was human. Everyone else either worshipped me or feared me. You did neither. You just told the truth. I don't know what will happen to me. I don't know if I'll ever leave this place, but I know this: I will never forget you. And I will never forget what you taught me. Some things matter more than money. Some things matter more than power. You were right. Victoria Harrington. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his desk drawer. He didn't know if the letter was sincere. He didn't know if Victoria had truly changed or if this was just another manipulation. But it didn't matter. Because the truth was, he hadn't done any of this for Victoria Harrington. He hadn't stood up that night to teach her a lesson. He hadn't fought for a year to change her mind. He had done it for Jerome Williams and his wife Margaret, for Patricia Mendez and her children, for Robert Chen's daughter, for everyone who had ever been hurt by someone who thought they were too powerful to face consequences. And for himself, for the man who had spent 14 months hiding from his own potential, his own purpose, his own power. That man was gone now. In his place stood someone who knew exactly who he was and what he was meant to do. Amelia burst through the office door home from school, her backpack swinging. "Daddy? Guess what? I got the highest grade in my class on the spelling test," Mrs. Johnson said. "I'm the best speller she's ever had." Marcus caught her swinging her around. "That's my girl. I'm so proud of you. Can we get ice cream? Please. You said we could celebrate when I got the highest grade." "I did say that." Marcus grinned. 3 scoops. 4. Don't push your luck. They walked out of the office together, hand in hand. The Brooklyn afternoon was warm and bright, full of possibility. "Daddy?" Amelia asked as they walked. "Yes, baby." "Are you happy?" Marcus stopped walking. He looked down at his daughter, at Lisa's eyes in that small face, at the future, looking back at him with complete trust and complete love. "Yes," he said. "I'm happy. Really happy. Not pretend happy." Marcus knelt down so he was at her level. "Really happy. The happiest I've been in a long time." He touched her cheek. "You know why?" "Why?" "Because I finally stopped hiding. I finally started being who I'm supposed to be. And because I have you, and Grandma, and the memory of your mom watching over us." He smiled. "That's everything, Amelia. That's all anyone needs." Amelia threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, baby girl. More than anything in the world." They continued walking toward the ice cream shop, the late afternoon sun warm on their faces. Marcus thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. The pain, the loss, the hiding, the moment when wine splashed in his face and something inside him finally broke free. He thought about Victoria Harrington spending her remaining years in prison, finally understanding what she had lost. He thought about all the victims who had found their voice because one man had found his. And he thought about Lisa, her laugh, her strength, her absolute certainty that he was capable of greatness even when he couldn't see it himself. "You were right," he told her silently. "You were always right. The world was full of people who looked at others and saw less, who judged by appearance, by uniform, by the color of skin. But the world was also full of people who refused to be defined by those judgments, who carried truth inside them like a weapon, who waited for the right moment to speak." Marcus Thompson had been one of those people, and he always would be, because he had learned the most important lesson of all. Your worth is not determined by what others see. Your worth is determined by what you know you carry inside. And when you finally find the courage to speak your truth, to stand up for what's right, to refuse to be invisible anymore, everything changes. Not just for you, for everyone. That was the lesson Marcus taught Amelia every day. That was the lesson he would teach for the rest of his life. That was the lesson Victoria Harrington learned too late. And that was the truth that would echo through generations long after all of them were gone. Some people are born to serve. Some people are born to rule. But the ones who change the world are the ones who refuse to accept either destiny. They write their own story. They speak their own truth. They become exactly who they were meant to be. That is the power no one can take away. That is the legacy no one can destroy. That is the victory that lasts forever.